Hey, everyone, what's going on? Welcome back. We're doing this, right? Princess of Thieves. So, I am going to MC my own presentation because that's just how we roll over here at Apisecure. I'm gangster like that. I am going to monitor the chat in another window, but because I'll be running SlideShare, I won't be able to flip to it that often. So what I'll do is I'll run through the presentation, and then once I'm done with the presentation, I will check that window. What you're about to see is my my talk, Princess of Thieves, basically 21st century bank robbing from your living room, and how I hacked banks and cryptocurrency exchanges. I think it was like 30 or 50 cryptocurrency exchanges and banks within 1 week. It was actually pretty cool. So definitely put your questions in the chat. I'm sure some of you will have quite a few questions. So put them in the chat or put them in the Q&A tab, and I will read off the questions once I'm done. And if no one asks any questions, I'm just going to, I guess, just talk about random stuff. All right, so this is the talk that I gave at a private MasterCard conference. So it's a great talk, so I hope all of you like it. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, so my favorite quote is, I start out all my presentations with a quote just because it's so fire. If I were to advise a hostile nation state on how to cripple the US financial system, I'd tell them to start with the APIs first. I love this quote just simply because it really speaks to how critical APIs are and how much we rely on APIs now for critical infrastructure. You know, our entire financial system actually is powered and plumbed by APIs. So it's a really big deal. And so I strongly believe that a single individual capable of being able to hack APIs can go up an entire country's army and military. So, you know, we in the United States have military superiority in land, sea, and air. You know, look at how quickly we took over Iraq, right? I believe we took it over, the country completely over in less than a week. So, you know, no one can really compete with us in traditional warfare, which is why a lot of warfare has moved to asymmetry against U.S. forces. So, you know, if you think about that, you know, when in one single individual with so much industrial control systems and financial systems all really being powered and run by APIs, you have a lot of power in your hands as an API hacker. So for those of you who don't know who the hell I am, shame on you. No, just kidding. I'm a recovering hacker of 23 years. I like to say I retired, was it this year? Retired this year from cybersecurity. So I'm now a full-time filmmaker working in Hollywood. My wife and I both run Night Studios, which is a subsidiary of Night Group, and it's a film production company. So since we opened our doors, we now have 8 TV series franchises that we're running and producing. And we now run a TV network. So on January 1st, we launched Night TV Plus. And think of it like a Netflix for cybersecurity. So all of the cyber genre entertainment and documentaries and e-learning are on Night TV Plus. So you can subscribe at nighttvplus.com. Take a look at it. As a matter of fact, yesterday we got approved on Amazon Fire. So if you have an Amazon Fire TV, you can install the Night TV Plus app and subscribe. We have submitted that to Apple TV, Roku, Hulu, and so those are currently under review. I was arrested in 1997 at my high school for hacking into a government network. And so since then, went to go work for the U.S. intelligence community in cyber warfare once those charges were dropped. And like I said earlier, Mel and I run a family of companies. So within Night Group, we have Night Events, which is actually a co-founder of this conference that we run with API Days. Night Inc., Night Studios, which is the film production company. Night Inc. is a digital agency where we do a lot of written content. Night Publishing, where we publish books, as well as Night Coffee. For those of you who have been waiting for our first roast called Black Hat, it's actually shipping. It's on its way over here. We have over 1,500 bags of coffee coming. So we're super excited about that. The website is up at nightcoffeeco.com. If you want to take a look and get your coffee, we should be opening it up for orders, I think, next week. I am also the writer and director and producer of several of the TV franchises like Scorched Earth, Ransom, Heat, Dark Ops, Underdog Games. I am a published author. For those of you who know of my book, Hacking Connected Cars, if you've not read it and you're into hacking vehicular mechatronics and connected cars, go check it out on Amazon. I am a serial entrepreneur. I've started and sold multiple cybersecurity startups, and I'm an API hacker. I hacked mHealth apps. Both John and Graham are here from HL7, and we'll be speaking on fire security. But really, I guess, put myself on the map with that research with hacking 30 mHealth apps in less than a week, fire APIs in less than a week, and connected cars and banks. The connected cars thing was actually pretty cool. So what I had actually demonstrated was the ability to take remote control of any Ford on the road with an active telematics subscription, which is on by default, and was able to remotely start and stop the engine and remotely lock and unlock the doors by hacking their APIs. So, all right, about this particular research, this is an older slide, so I think the total count came to 50. The targets included both cryptocurrency exchanges and neobanks and regular brick and mortar banks. So for those of you who don't know what a neobank is basically a bank without an actual branch. It's an internet bank. Some of you may be familiar with Ally Bank. There's a few others like Bank of Internet. Basically, they service all of their retail banking accounts. All the consumer accounts are all online. I really believe that's the future of banking. I mean, we saw the recent collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, right? And several people that we know were affected by that. I mean, you see the Washington Mutual crash. They went belly up. God, it's been 10, 15 years now. It's been a while. So, I really think that the future of banking really is online. So just a quick rundown of all of my findings. There were hard-coded production passwords in a lot of these apps, the cryptocurrency exchange as well as the bank apps. So in addition to hard-coded API keys and tokens, believe it or not, there are actually hard-coded usernames and passwords in one of these apps, which was shocking. And yeah, I think so. There were 49 of those, which reminds me there were a total of 50 apps. The total account holders affected by my API breaches were 123 million accounts, which was really shocking. The total number of assets under management across all these financial services companies that I targeted was 269 billion, which is a significant amount of money, obviously, across the cryptocurrency exchanges and banks. The most common vulnerability found, and I was just talking about this with Vaishali, was API 1 2019, which is broken object level authorization. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in my presentation today, and just really why it's so commonly found. I feel like developers are doing a great job at authenticating API requests, but not so great of a job at authorizing them, which is what leads to things like BOLA vulnerabilities. 10 of the apps that I tested at the time of this writing were vulnerable to what I like to call woman in the middle attacks or person in the middle attacks, whatever. And that's basically me sitting in between the mobile app of the cryptocurrency exchange app or the bank and the backend API, and intercepting the traffic, decrypting it, and manipulating those requests and mutating those requests in order to see how the API responds. A lot of you have heard me say this before. To me, hacking really is nothing more than sending stimulus to an application that the developer didn't expect to receive. That's all hacking really is to me. And I actually, Dr. Katie Paxton Fierce said this in our keynote, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. when you're hacking APIs, it's really important that you really just use the app the way it was intended, pushing buttons. So what I'll do is I'll create a spreadsheet. I'll take a spreadsheet out and I will write down every possible function that I can do with the app. View my accounts, transfer money, open a new account, change my profile information. I'll write all of those into a spreadsheet. And then once I'm done writing those in the spreadsheet, I'll go in there and I'll create a status column of every single request I tested. And then I'll copy and paste the request once I have a working Minim tool set up. I'll copy and paste that specific request into the spreadsheet so I've got it. And then that will allow me to go in later with like Postman or something and then send that to the API, but changing the parameters. For those of you who have seen my previous presentations, I know I'm not very energetic right now. I'm actually coming down with COVID. I think I'm feeling very COVID-y today, not feeling well. So please bear with me. I apologize. I know I'm not my usual spunky self. I'm just not feeling that great today. Anyway, so what the hell is an API? So if you're here at this conference, I would assume you know what the hell an API what the hell an API is, because I think we got much bigger problems if you don't. But I'll just quickly explain it. The whole visitor in a restaurant thing. Waiter is the API serving the request from the menu and the patron to the back-end kitchen where the chef cooks it. And then that's obviously the server. And then the waiter or API brings that food back out, which is the data in that scenario. All right, pretty simple. Okay, so let's talk about now, for those of you who don't know what BOLA is. BOLA, I like to use is an analogy, is a car valet. So let's say I'm going to pick on Yvonne for a minute. So let's say Yvonne drives up in his Lamborghini to the Marriott, and I pull up behind Yvonne in my Hyundai, and the valet, I see that the valet gives him a ticket after taking his keys to his Lamborghini, and gives Yvonne the number 18, right? And so I come up behind in my Hyundai, and then I see that the valet for some reason gives me the number 17. I leave, I take a Sharpie and I change that 7 to an 8, and then come back and then hand the ticket to the valet and then drive off with the Lamborghini. This is a great example of BOLA. I'm authenticated, meaning I have a ticket, but I'm not authorized to drive away with Yvonne's car. That's a great example, I think, of BOLA, is that, you're authenticated, you have an OAuth token, for example. So you're allowed to be there, you're allowed to be communicating with the API, you've authenticated, but you're attempting to access data, whether it's patient records or in this research, a bank account, where I'm attempting to transfer money out of an account that doesn't belong to me. So it's outside the scope, pun intended, of my scopes. And in a lot of the cases, I'll see that the developers implemented OAuth, but they didn't implement any scopes on the token. So there's no scopes at all, restricting me to a specific account information for my bank account. Okay. Pretty cool artwork, right? I love this artwork. Okay, so for those of you who are thinking, hey, Alissa, that's a lot of banks. You're able to transfer money out of accounts that don't belong to you. You're able to change PIN codes of bank customers. You're able to access data that you shouldn't have been able to access. They must have been really small banks. They must have not been very big. So they didn't have a really big, budget, blah, 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 whatever it may be. They were actually quite large. And if you look at the target demographic data here, you can see the number of employees that were targeted. For example, one of the US banks had between 10 to 50,000 employees. 5 of my targets had 51,000 to 100,000 employees. I mean, these were really big companies. The assets under management, 11 of my targets had 100 billion to 500 billion in assets under management. These are huge, right? One of them, actually 4 of them, had over $1 trillion in assets. And then the number of customers. For those of you who are interested in the cryptocurrency exchanges, obviously the targets were more global with cryptocurrency exchanges. 5 of them were in the United States. I did kind of try and sample different cryptocurrency exchanges across different geographies. You can use your imagination, just because there aren't really that many cryptocurrency exchanges, who these victims were in my targeting. So the crypto under management, again, between 1 million and 1 billion. I learned very quickly that in the cryptocurrency world, they don't call it assets under management. They call it crypto under management. So the number of, the amount of account holders, the assets under management, number of employees as well. Okay, so let's get into the actual findings. Oh, sorry. Let me talk about the neobanks here really fast as well. So the neobanks, let's go on. Okay, the neobanks. There was a pretty good sampling of international banks. So 17 were in the U.S., 3 were in the UK, 1 was Canadian. We love Canada, right? Number of employees, again, 1 to 50. 5 of those, 7 had between 101 to 500 employees. 4 of them had over 1,000 employees. So again, these are not small companies. That's pretty much the point that I was trying to make. Okay, this is an actual screenshot of the hard-coded keys and tokens. You can see some Firebase stuff in there. Just stuff that shouldn't be hard-coded, at least not hard-coded and obfuscated. Approved talked a little bit about this in their presentation yesterday. But, this is just some of the craziness, the wonkiness that I was seeing, giving me access to quite a lot of stuff, including, again, private keys and tokens, hard-coded tokens. So if you're, one of the things that I've been emceeing the red track, right, all day yesterday and today. And Mike, the common question I like to ask some of the speakers is, hey, what tools do you use? What do you like to use? If you're asked, okay, Alissa, what are your favorite tools to use when hacking APIs? I do use Ubuntu as my operating system, but I'm primarily on a Mac. I'm on a Mac right now. I've pretty much every Apple. I'm an Apple snob. I love Apple. I prefer Burp Suite. I'll switch obviously between Burp Suite and Postman. I talked a little bit about this in the Vishali presentation, but I mean, it really depends on the target API. It depends on the project, right? So you're not going to use a hammer to hammer in a screw, right? You're going to use a screwdriver. To me, it's always the right tool for the job. If I'm targeting a web API, I'm probably going to be using Burp Suite. If I need to craft API requests from scratch, instead of capturing it in a woman in the middle attack and then forwarding it on using repeater, I'll use Postman. I do have a Mac Studio M1 Ultra, fully loaded, 128 gigs of RAM, 32 core CPU, 64 core GPU, so it's fully loaded. Obviously, I do most of my video editing and color grading on it, but I do actually use it for a lot of hacking, just because I'm too lazy to get up out of this studio and then walk over to our other studio and use my other computer. I will actually combine both Postman and Minim Proxy. For those of you who don't know what Minim Proxy is, it is a great tool. I haven't actually heard any of the other speakers talk about it. I like it. It's, I used it very heavily in my connected car hacking, and I also used it in this bank and cryptocurrency exchange hacking. What it does is it basically is a Minim tool. It'll sit there in between 2 endpoints, in this case, the mobile app and the API. And it presents a certificate in both directions, just like Burp Suite will, and any other proxy, and allow you to obviously decrypt that traffic, allowing you to understand and learn how the API works. So probably saying, okay, Alyssa, why do that? Well, you can't hack an application or an API, for example, if you don't know how it works. In order to learn how that API works, especially when you've got no documentation, you have to try everything, and then you have to look at what the app is sending the API, and then being able to take that and determine what you're going to do from there. So I use Minim Proxy or Burp Suite in order to accomplish that. you want to, again, really understand how something works before you do anything. Okay, so Kite Runner and FFUF, I am a huge proponent of fuzzing. If you are not fuzzing APIs, you are missing quite a lot of vulnerabilities. I can't stress that enough. Kite Runner is a fantastic fuzzer discovery tool. FFUF is a fantastic fuzzer. Go check it out. Go download it. It's free. There's really no reason why that shouldn't work. Why you shouldn't use it. I mean, it takes some learning. Kite Runner is super powerful in the fact that you can actually copy and paste your OAuth token. So once you authenticate and you grab the token, you can copy and paste it into Kite Runner and use that for doing discovery. And a lot of you will recognize this from the old legacy web application hacking days where you're trying to find hidden files and folders on a web server. Pretty much the same concept, right? It's looking for hidden things on an API, sensitive things on an API. So check it out today. It's an awesome tool. Again, it's free. Really no reason not to download it. So this is the architecture of my attacks with these banks and cryptocurrency exchanges. So I basically downloaded every single one of the target apps on my phone and then used a combination of Burp Suite and Postman. Now let's talk about MobSF for a moment. Mobile Security Framework is a phenomenal tool. It's free. You can go download it and install it. I would recommend you compile it and install it from scratch instead of using Kali. A lot of you are probably like, hey, Alyssa, why don't you use Kali Linux? Okay, I want to make this clear. I am not a Kali hater. I'm not going to hate on Kali. I love Kali. It's great. It's beautiful. It's quickly get up and running with the hacker distro and be ready to hack in minutes. It's the fact that everything is pre-installed just kind of, it just, to me, irks me. You know, I don't know what versions of libraries. I don't know what's on there. I don't want to accidentally install a conflicting library. I like to build my workstations from scratch. I like to install Ubuntu and compile and install the tools. For those of you who are new to cybersecurity, for those of you who are new to IT in general, I know that your initial reaction is to go out there and go the easy way, download and install Kali, and download and install GUI web-based tools. You learn so much more by forcing yourself into the command line, compiling and installing tools, trying to troubleshoot in compile errors. I've learned over the last 23 years, I've learned more about I've learned more through troubleshooting than anything else. When you're trying to fix a problem, you learn. Your troubleshooting is such a great learning technique. So don't try and go directly to these away, especially if you're new to cybersecurity and you're new to just this stuff in general. Force yourself to the command line. Try to use command line tools if there's an option. For example, I know there's Metasploit Pro. Go download and install Metasploit Framework. Metasploit Framework is just as powerful. It just doesn't have that sexy GUI. But just that's my recommendation to you, is if you really want to learn and really understand the ins and outs of things, go download that. Okay, I went on a tangent. Sorry. MobSF. Mobile Security Framework is a phenomenal tool. What it does is it allows you to do both static code analysis, which is also referred to as dead code analysis, and dynamic analysis or live analysis. MobSF literally allows you to just take an APK file that you've extracted off of an Android device. I usually use APK Extractor. You can install it from the Google Play Store, and you literally just pick up that APK, that app, and extract it as an APK file to like your Google Drive. Then I go onto my workstation, I download the APK file, and then I kid you not, you literally just drag and drop that APK file into your web browser, and MobSF takes it from there. It takes the APK file and it reverses it all the way back to the source code. And that is how I was able to find all these hard-coded usernames and passwords, and API keys and tokens. It is a very powerful tool. Go play with it. If you haven't yet done anything with MobSF, that's a great place to start with mobile app pen testing. Okay. I had no idea how to take so many keys and tokens. I think the total number was like 400. I had over like 400 keys and tokens. And figure out how to put that in a PowerPoint deck. So the reason why this is blurred is because obviously to protect a lot of these apps, you're going to see some really shocking stuff in these screenshots today. Like I said, you've got a lot of private keys in here. For some reason, there was some stuff left in there from staging servers. So you could actually go to a staging server. I had the keys and tokens and even usernames and passwords for staging servers that were running the same version as the production servers. But guess what? Can any of you think, put in the comment thread, what do you think you're going to find on a staging server versus a production server? Why would you target a staging server versus production? It starts with an S and ends with security. There's usually no security on staging servers that you might find in production, right? Because it needs to be open. They don't want developers having to run into issues. Usually, if you can gain access to staging servers, it's running the same version of what's out there. You can do all of your testing and hacking on a staging server, which would affect production. So yeah, here's another one. Okay, I forgot to redact this, but you're just gonna, again, see some really shocking stuff in here. You can learn so much. I'm just checking to make sure there's no bank names in there or cryptocurrency exchanges. You can learn so much from just reviewing the code through MobSF for a mobile app. And for those of you who are like, I'm not a programmer, I won't know what to look for. MobSF actually, we should talk about that. But MobSF actually will take the code and show you in a menu-based system where you should be focusing. So it'll show you, there's a separate section in MobSF just for keys and tokens. There's a section where it's making guesses on whether or not something is a username and password. So check it out. You don't have to be a programmer to look at it. And I know this is a religious debate, and it's something I like to talk about a lot because actually it just came up on social media yesterday. Ben Sagapur, I always get his name wrong. I never know how to pronounce his name. Sagapur? Nahamsek. Posted about this and whether or not you have to be a programmer to be a hacker. There's going to be people here, as well as out on social media, that don't agree with me. But some of the best hackers I ever met were not programmers. You do not need to be a programmer to be a great hacker. Think about social engineers. Think about how hacking has evolved today, right? 23 years ago, when I first got into hacking, you were targeting Woo FTPD buffer overflows. Yeah, at the time it would have been great to write your own buffer overflow rather than trying to grab a 0-day exploit out there. But a lot of the hacking these days are because what code do you need to read for that? What code do you have to write for that? I mean, you do not need to be a programmer to be a great hacker today. Hacking has evolved so much beyond that, and I don't know, prove me wrong. Like, I'm not saying, and everyone, please don't get me wrong. I for those of you who are programmers, I'm not trying to insult you. I'm not saying that you guys suck. I'm just saying that you don't have to know how to write a buffer overflow to be a hacker, right? If you program, I have an enormous amount of respect for you. I've just never been interested in programming. I have no care to learn how to program. Staring at lines of code all day, trying to troubleshoot why your code isn't compiling or working. I'm not that. No, I'm not about that life. I'm not about that life. I'm a visual person. I'm an artist. I'd rather be editing or doing color grading or whatever than staring at code. Okay, so that's it. That's my rant. Okay, so this is screenshots of Minim proxy of me attacking one of the banks for those of you who, hopefully you can see this and it's not too blurry. I don't know if you can see my mouse arrow, but here you can see on the left-hand side the card type. So the actual Visa or MasterCard or debit card type, and then a unique identifier. And then on the right-hand side, see, I told all of you I use Postman. So these screenshots, which seem to be very rare here at Apisecure, are screenshots of Postman. So I blurred out the post URI, of course, but here you can see the card number, and this was a vulnerability in a bank that allowed me to actually assign a new PIN code to any bank customer. And so as long as you knew the card number, and of course, all of you know what I'm about to say, as long as you have one card number, you can just cycle through all the rest of them and increment it by the number one, and you've got pretty much every bank customer just by incrementing or decrementing that number. So I was able to go in there and change the PIN code of any bank customer I wanted to, which was super cool. So what did I learn from robbing banks? Despite it being, well, this is, I guess, now 2023. Despite it being 2023, developers are still not authorizing authenticated requests, and it seems to be systemic. If you look at all of my findings across all of my research, and everyone, oh, I should probably bring this up. I know I've gotten some complaints on social media about the fact that I took my YouTube channel down. So, okay. I had about, over about 100 videos on my YouTube channel, I had about 18,000 subscribers, and a lot of great videos on hacking APIs and hacking cars. But when we launched Night Studios and Night TV Plus, I transitioned the channel over to Night TV Plus, and I signed up for a personal YouTube channel for myself where I'm now creating content for filmmakers. However, I have an announcement to make. I have created a new YouTube channel called the Alissa Night Archives, where I am uploading all of my old historical YouTube videos, including videos that have not been previously released. I kind of feel like, you know how Tupac, you see new albums from Tupac years after he's been dead. Yeah, all right. Not that I'm saying that I'm anywhere near being a rapper, but I wanted to make my old videos available to all of you. They have not gone away for good. I'm going through them and I'm uploading them to the Alissa Night Archives. I think the YouTube channel is literally called Alissa Night Archives. So if you haven't yet subscribed, subscribe. I'm going to be working on uploads for that over the next week or so. Okay, so where was I? Organizations are not maintaining asset catalogs of their APIs. You can't protect what you don't know you have. A lot of the trouble that I was running into with several of these banks and cryptocurrency exchanges was they didn't know. There's a big discrepancy between the APIs they thought they had and then the number of APIs they actually had. It is a real problem. This is why the API security vendors are always saying, hey, look, you know, we'll do recon and find all your APIs for you, because it's important. And I've been saying this for the last 23 years. You can't protect what you don't know you have. And if you don't know what APIs are out there or even what kind of data those APIs are serving, how can you protect them, right? There still is no context in security. A lot of the victims in the research were protecting their APIs with WAFs, web application firewalls. Ladies and gentlemen, please stop doing that. Don't secure your APIs with WAFs. They are a rules-based, pattern-based system that reminds me of the old Snort IDS days. For those of you who are old enough to remember Snort, you know, it had high false positives. I love Snort. Don't get me wrong. I loved Snort, and now Sierra, but there's a lot of false positives because it's just looking for known knowns, patterns of bad things. And that it doesn't cut it. There's no context there. And if you don't have context in security, then I don't believe you have an effective tool. So context in security is so important, which is why you want to use purpose-built API security solutions to protect your APIs. Many companies are transferring their risk when outsourcing. Just understand that when you're having an outside development house, whether it's offshore or not, whatever, develop code for you, you're not advocating that risk, right? You shouldn't say, oh, well, you know what? They're developing our code. It does. They gave us a SOC 2 Type 2 certification. You all love that, right? Oh, we're secure. We have SOC 2 Type 2. What the hell does this have to do with anything? Oh, we're secure. We have ISO 27001. Okay, congratulations. You paid for and passed your audit. What does that have to do with real security? There's compliance and then there's security. Well, I like to quote my wife, Mel, who says, compliance will keep you out of the, what was it? Compliance will keep you from getting fined and security will keep you out of the news or something like that. I probably butchered that, but I never get that quote right. Anyway, so compliance versus security, I don't believe they're the same thing. So a lot of the banks were transferring their risk. Now, for those of you who already read that bullet point, one of the banks outsourced the development of their APIs in their mobile app. And I found that the vulnerabilities that allowed me to hack these other customer bank accounts was rinsed and reused in every single bank that company developed code for. And so that one bank that I found those vulnerabilities in affected 300 other banks because all of those banks outsourced the development of their APIs and app to them. It is a real problem. Okay, so had this been, had I been a black hat and had this been an actual attack, I would have been able to hack 300 other banks from hacking that one bank. Think about that for a second. Just think about it. That's crazy. I mean, that's what SolarWinds, but the API version. That's a good analogy. And a lot of the banks just weren't doing penetration testing. So, am I over time? I haven't even checked the time. I think I'm okay. Okay. So, I think, another really big problem in talking with some of these organizations is they weren't hacking their own APIs. Have any of you run into that? Put in the comments, let me know. Have any of you run into that where an organization is like, oh no, we can't test our APIs. We can't hack our APIs because they're production. Like, what if you bring down the bank? I was a CISO for a bank. Do you know how often I heard that, those are production APIs. We can't test those. We need to get a permission to test from the partners from our supply chain, and they won't let us pen test. But they provided us our SOC 2 Type 2 report. Yeah, that's so stupid. I don't think things are really going to get better until that's fixed, right? We have to change that. I've been in, even as a penetration tester, as a freelancer, as a consultant, I would have clients telling me, hey, look, don't touch these APIs because they're production and it could bring down bank transfers. Like, why did you call me? Why did you hire me then? Why am I here? only touch these like 2 APIs and just don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain, right? Oh my God, like, story of my life. I don't know. I am definitely officially retired from cybersecurity at this point. But however, I am a contributor on the OWASP Base Security Top 10 in the new version. So I actually wrote 3 of the new OWASP Base Security Top 10 vulnerabilities. But and actually, Paulo said this. He's like, you don't really retire from security. You're always there. I don't know. Anyway, that's something that I do not miss about security is working with a client or working within a company that I worked for, and them telling me something is out of scope and can't be tested because it's production. Like, I mean, I get that, but can't you build the same thing in a dev environment that I can test? That's the same, uses the same code base, or it's just stupid. I just think organizations are going to continue to be hacked if we keep doing the status quo. Okay, that's it. And I promise this isn't a malicious QR code. This is a QR code for my Blink app. And you're probably like, Alissa, what's Blink? Blink is a really cool new virtual business card. So if you scan this, it will actually add me to the contacts on your phone. And it actually contains my mobile phone number. Please don't call me over and over and hang up or prank call me. But it's got my mobile phone and it's got all my social media stuff in it. And the neat thing about Blink is it tells you where we met. So if you and I met at a conference, it will actually say you met Alissa at Black Hat or DEF CON at this location. It's pretty cool. You can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram. So yeah, thanks. You guys survived my presentation on robbing banks from your living room. I am going to stop the slide share. I will go back over to the comment tab. Let me see. Q&A. Oh, a lot of questions. Okay, a lot of questions. Okay. Julio said a few seconds ago, says, Alissa, although the WAF does not identify logical vulnerability, it still identifies brute force. It still has geolocation policies that shrink the surface. So is there significance? Julio, that is a great question. I want to make sure that none of you misunderstand me when I say this. I am not dogging WAFs. WAFs are a necessary evil. They do definitely address an attack surface of no knowns. I did a lot of API hacking with a certain WAF vendor. Can I say their name? What's wrong with saying their name? There's nothing wrong with that, right? Signal Sciences. WAFs have value in things like the OWASP top 10, looking for SQL injection attempts, looking for, cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery, whatever. They're great at stuff like that. But if you're going to use a WAF, also use an API security solution that's purpose-built. There's a bunch of them out there. No Name Security, Traceable. Yes, I'm on the board for a lot of these API security vendors, but they're great tools. No Name's a great tool. Traceable's a great tool. There's 42 Crunch. There's Salt Security. These are all great API security solutions, and they're purpose-built to look specifically for things like the OWASP API security top 10, not just the OWASP top 10. So Julio, great question. Yes, WAFs are a necessity, and I'm not saying not to use them. I'm a big believer in an onion approach. Like, I like to describe it like an onion, like layers of an onion. Security should be layered. You should have multiple layers of different security solutions that do different things. The more the better. More the better. All right, Gabby says, so when approaching a project that no one has ever done, or there is little to no information on the topic, how do you start your researching approach towards such a project? I learned a lot from my hardships with projects I would have to troubleshoot until I figured it out. That's a really good point, Debbie. I want to say that I pretty much encounter something new in every single project that I do. Every single pen test I ever did, I always run into something new. And I guess I'll direct you back to my point that if you want to hack something, you have to learn how it works. I'm a big believer in the 80-20 rule. Like in Abraham Lincoln, who said, if I had 8 hours to cut down a tree, I'd spend 6 hours sharpening my axe. So I will spend like 90%, 80% of my time learning the app first, learning on what the API is expecting, learning what the API responds with to that stimulus, and then attempting to hack from there. So great point, Gabby. I would say, every project that I've ever done was new for me. And I learned so much along the way just by learning what the developer expected me to do as a regular user, not as a hacker. A lot of you need to also just start out with the mindset, not of the mindset of a hacker, but of the mindset of a user, and then using it and then figuring out what you need to do to break it. What did the developer not expect you to do? Victor Alvarez says, hi, Alissa, what do you mean with no limit at the crypto API exchanges? Thanks for your talk. What do you mean with no limit at the crypto API exchanges? No limit. When did I say no limit? What was that in reference to? I'm sorry, Victor, I don't remember that part. No limit, cryptocurrency APIs. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't remember what slide that was on or where I said that. But just an FYI, in case this is what you were referring to. So with the cryptocurrency exchanges, the banks and the neobanks, they were all mobile APIs. I went through static code analysis of the mobile app first, grabbed all the keys, hardcode keys and tokens from there, API secrets from there, then took those further, and then went on with the woman in the middle attack, where I learned what the APIs were expecting to receive, and then responded from there. Oh man, am I like way over time? How am I on time? I think let me, hold on everyone, let me just check my time. What time am I supposed to be done? Listen, I'll get to more questions after I figure out when I'm supposed to stop. So 12:45, 12, 11, 10, 9. Okay, so 9:45. Okay. So more questions. Wardell asks, when I capture a request, rarely do I find anything in the body of the request. It seems like data is hidden as a subfield of the cookie and it has to be obfuscated. Yeah, Wardell, it depends on what, again, it's back to that whole, how does the app work? What is the API going? Like, what is the app setting? My advice to you, Wardell, because obviously I don't know which packet and what packet it was and what you were doing. You guys and girls, you think like you have to go out and get this really fancy app and Evernote, or go get this really cool like fancy hacker based note-taking system in the cloud. No. Just use a spreadsheet. Sorry. Just use a spreadsheet. You really don't need anything more fancy than that. In the first column, put every single button, every single thing the app can do, and then Wardell, I would just copy and paste every packet from every function. And then I agree with you. You're right. I mean, so a lot of the times there's no body. It's going to be like in the headers. It's going to be, also take a look at the OAuth token. I don't know. Have you guys ever heard of, let me see. I don't know if you've ever heard of, sorry, when I say guys, I mean guys and girls too. So guys and girls, I don't know if you've ever heard of jot.io, jwt.io. You can copy and paste an entire jot token into the web page, and it will decode it, because it's not encrypted, it's encoded. It'll decode it and give you all the information. So like one of the talks yesterday talked about like putting sensitive data in the jot token. That's why, is you'll see, and this is for you, Wardell, you'll see some developers will actually put super sensitive stuff in the jot token. So yeah, you're right. Maybe the cookie or not the cookie or the jot token, take a look at that as well. All of that is super important. Okay, where was my tab for the questions? Sorry, everyone. I lost my tab. I'm one of those people with like 2,000 Chrome tabs open and multiple Chrome windows. Let's see. You know what I hate about Hopin is it doesn't put the Q&A tab in the actual tab that you're in. Okay, I'm going to have to clearly relog into Hopin. All right, everyone, give me a second. I'm sorry. Let me just quickly pull it back up. That was a good question, Wardell. All right. But yeah, you will see stimulus and response packets for an API that will just have no body whatsoever, and you need to find all the nuggets and fun stuff in the headers and stuff. Okay, so let's mute this track. Stimulus and response packets for an API. Okay, that was me. Wow, there's a huge lag. There's a huge delay on Hopin. Okay, next question. Mark Barton says, Alissa, do you have a recommendation for breaking into Apisecure and pen testing? Have been more general IT management for 23 years, and I want to transition to security. Mark, first of all, welcome to the party. Welcome to the frickin' party. It's so good that you're here. I'm so glad that you've decided to make this leap. You're going to have a great time in cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is a really exciting job, obviously. Absolutely glad that you are making this leap. My advice to you, for breaking into specifically into API security, start out with the basics and really understand. I mean, it sounds like if you start out in IT management, you have a basic understanding of operating systems, networking, TCP/IP networking, that sort of stuff. If there's a great book that was published by Corey Ball called Hacking APIs. That's obviously a great place to start. 23 years ago, there was no such thing as security influencers, right? There was really 23 years ago, you couldn't even get a degree in security. Now you can get a PhD in cybersecurity, which is shocking, which is great. It's cool. We as a human species evolve. But my recommendation to you, Mark, is read that book. Check out who the API influencers are, API hacking influencers, like YouTubers. Dr. Katie Paxton Fierce, subscribe to her channel. She's amazing. She was a keynote speaker. Hopefully you saw her keynote yesterday. There's just so much information all around us now that I didn't have growing up in cybersecurity, which seems so long ago now. You have, what is it, Udemy, right? You have all of these places where you can get free training where you don't necessarily have to pay $5,000 for SANS training. It's ridiculously expensive, sorry. But there's just all this information around you. It's just taking the time to take that training. And Mark, you have, like I said, you have a lot of great influencers out there who are willing to put out free content. Corey mentioned he's putting out a free course. You've got Apisec University. I think it's pronounced Apisec, APIsec University. They have free training. There's all kinds of great training out there for free. So I definitely recommend that. As far as getting into cybersecurity in general, my recommendation is, and don't key my car for saying this, but CISSP, right? But not specifically to get the certification. I'm saying, like, read the CBK, the Common Body of Knowledge. It's a great sort of, 10-mile wide, 1-inch thick approach to getting a quick dive into cybersecurity, a very superficial level. But it goes into like the TCP/IP three-way handshakes and SYNAC, all these things, that all the basic fundamentals and foundations, and then it goes a little deeper than that. But my recommendation is start there, and then don't do the whole certification mill thing. I have enormous respect for people with certifications, but it's not the end all be all. And to me, it really is about learning from the homework and the training and the effort to try and get that certification. That's what to me matters the most. The learning that you get in studying for the certification, and these like offensive security, OSCP, the practicals that you have to do to get those certifications. All of those are the most important than the piece of paper itself to me. So great question. Mark asks, is there going to be a recording? Yes, all of the talks at Apisecure are recorded and they're published on the Apisecure website. That's apisecure.co. If any of you missed last year's conference, all of the videos from Apisecure are on there from last year. There's some great talks, and I'd urge you to go watch them. Alyssa, the site again to reach him between Foxbuster and Kite Runner, which is better for AP fuzzing? I honestly, and I brought this up yesterday, and Pong asked this. I've never used Foxbuster. I've never even heard of it before yesterday. So I can only speak to Kite Runner. I freaking love Kite Runner. If none of you have read it, I published a white paper on Kite Runner. I think it's called Running with Kites. Over at Detectify. So go check out that white paper. It's a great deep dive into Kite Runner and what it's capable of doing, what you can do with it. Wardell asked the same question. Is this just straight pandas, or are you using an optimized data frame processor? Taggart asked that. Is this just straight pandas? Pandas? is that from Dark Ops? What's that referring to? Or using an optimized data for browser? I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know if that's a joke or okay, sorry. Message me directly if I missed that Hamid says, what are your recommended resources, book, courses, and discussion about that? I am a reader, Hamad. I read. I'm so tired. Like, no one wants to read anymore. I feel like people who read books are a dying breed, unfortunately. But as an author myself, obviously, I'm going to say books. I love reading books. I love audiobooks when I'm working out at the gym. I'll listen to an audiobook. Yes, books all the way, Hamad or Hamid. Love books. So yeah, definitely Corey's book. I feel there's obviously different kinesthetic learning styles. Some of you don't learn by reading. I get that. I'm not knocking you. I get it. Some of you, learn through auditory, some learn through visual. For me, I'm a book reader. I like to highlight. I like to, combine different apps like Readwise that extracts all of my highlights from my Kindle books and puts it into Notion. And, so I'm a book reader. All right. Anonymous says, I need to watch a recording as well. There's so much great content here. I'm working and hiding my phone, laughing out loud. Oh, sorry, Anonymous. I'm sorry you have to go through that. Yeah, definitely catch it later. apisecure.co. It's a great place to grab it. How to deal with updates coming from the development team that could repeat fixed threads. Is there an automatic monitoring tool to detect this? Ooh, that's a good question. So obviously, I'm going to tell you I'm a big proponent of shift left security. I think it's super important. You're always in security going to run into a problem where developers are constantly making updates and introducing new vulnerabilities since last pen test, which is why I believe, Victor, is that pen testing needs to be a continuous, plan, do, check, act, OODA loop. It needs to be constantly being done. It shouldn't be point-in-time security. I think it should be just something that you do over and over and over again. Because, especially with, a lot of organizations moving away from waterfall and moving to something, more Scrum, where you're having constant releases, you need to constantly be testing. Hack your own stuff. Aren't those APIs required for working with things like Firebase? What would recommendation be to avoid including those keys? So Tiger, great question. Yeah, a lot of, especially like the private keys and stuff, like they're necessary and you have to put them in the app. But there's a commercial tool like Approve has a tool for this. But and there's also free. You don't even have to pay for it. You can implement free tools to obfuscate your code. You don't have to pay. Yes, put the keys and tokens in there if you have to. And if you're not going to use a commercial tool to kind of get them out of the app. But if you're going to do that, you need to obfuscate it. You need to obfuscate the code. Don't make it so easy for me to deobfuscate it and or decode it and grab it right out of the source code. Make it hard. Now, Taggart, I have to obviously emphasize this, and you know what I'm about to say. Obfuscation is not encryption. It's obfuscation. So it is possible to deobfuscate it. But what you're doing is you're making it harder for me as the hacker to where it becomes such an impediment to my adversarial decision making that I move on to a softer target that hasn't implemented obfuscation that you may have, right? It's about just making it hard enough for me to just get sick of it and move on to the next API or app. Abdullah, how do you access your playbook? Yeah, so I actually did create a playbook. I want to say that I published it on my blog. So over the last 23 years, I was working on a workbook, a spreadsheet that had all of the tactics and techniques that I follow in pen testing. And I want to say I published it on LinkedIn. I'll look for it, but I want to say it was on my blog. All right. Only have like 1 minute left. Mainty says, thank you for this information. I'm interested as well. I'm not sure what path to take search degree. I'll end with this last question. Mainity, hopefully I'm pronouncing your name correctly. But yes, don't get sucked into the certification rumor mill, the certification mill, the expensive degrees. There's so many for-profit businesses trying to profit off of the cybersecurity industry through certifications and degree or certificate programs. You don't need it, especially those of you who are cash strapped. There's so much free training and so much free information out there that you don't need it. So that's it. You all survived my presentation. For those of you who want to gain access to my other hacking API videos and content, like I said, the Alissa Knight Archives YouTube channel is up. You can subscribe to it. I'm going to start uploading videos for you to access that. I also have, obviously, other videos. People have interviewed me on their channel on YouTube, so just search my name, Alissa Knight, on YouTube. And then you can also see some of the other white papers that I've published, like the Hacking Fire paper, the Hacking mHealth Apps paper, and that's it. All right, I'm going to step off the stage now. I love all of you. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I'll see you again soon.